What is going on, guys? We are back playing some more Surviving with Mechanism version 10. And today, guys, we are going to be setting up the thermal evaporation plant, which is a multi-block structure that's going to allow us to produce brine from water, and it's also going to allow us to make liquid lithium from brine. Now, the reason that you want brine is because it's going to be used at the beginning of 5 times ore processing, and liquid lithium is going to be used in actually 2 different scenarios. The first one, you're going to convert it to a solid, and it's going to be a crafting material for the induction matrix parts, which is actually something we're going to be getting to very soon, and then you can also use it as a liquid in the production of DT fuel. So chances are, if you're playing through Mekanism, even in a mod pack, and you're getting to sort of mid to late game builds, you're going to probably end up making multiple of these. You're going to need at least 2 because you need 1 to make the brine and 1 to make the lithium from the brine, but you might have even more if 1 max size 1 is not enough to suit your needs. Now, thankfully, we have been working on multi-block structures for the last couple episodes. The fission reactor over here was one of them, and then the industrial turbine was the next, and if you've worked with either of those, you would know that they're relatively complicated compared to other multi-blocks in modded Minecraft. You had, 9 to 10 different blocks that each had mathematical calculations to figure out how many you needed of each to make an ideal setup. Thankfully, that is not the case today. This one is so much easier to deal with. There's actually only 3 different types of blocks that you're going to need when setting this up, and then you have 2 optional blocks that can be used to generate the heat that you would need for this. So you don't even need to use those if you don't want to. It's much easier, and the sizing is also easier because you don't need to worry about the length, width, and height. You only need to worry about the height. So again, all around, so much easier to work with, and I'm just excited that we can kick our feet back and kind of enjoy today's episode instead of stressing out over things. So, over here we have all the stuff we need for crafting, and as you can see, there really is not much in here because while we do need a lot of blocks, they're all the same block. So, it's going to be a lot of steel used in today's episode, and then some copper, but that's pretty much it. You can also see down here we have a lot of solar generators. That is because we are going to be using advanced solar generators to heat this. That is one of the optional blocks that we're going to go over. So that's really where most of the cost is going to come from today. So let's grab all this stuff out and then we can go over what we're going to need exactly. And I think we should hopefully have enough room in our inventory. Okay, we'll grab those out later because we are going to need the dirt for something. So the first things that we can craft really quickly are going to be the advanced solar generators to open up some inventory room. But basically, the thermal evaporation plant does not need power. You don't need to power it with, any energy per se, but what is going to determine the rate at which it's able to produce things is going to be the temperature of it. And so technically you can run it without any additional heat, and just the ambient heat will be enough to generate some brine or some lithium, but chances are if you want to produce any appreciable amount, you're going to need to provide it with heat. And the 2 different ways to do that is using either a heater and giving it fuel. You have the option of the fuelwood heater or the resistive heater, which you can then give power to. So you can use those, and those can heat it up. You can also use solar generators on top of it as more of a passive heat method. So we're going to be using the solar generators, and you're going to put 4 on top of it. But again, you do not need either of these. You can run it at ambient temperature and actually generate stuff from it. So we're going to be making 4 of these. So we'll go through and make them. Unfortunately, you have to click it every single time, but there we go. We've got 4 to put on top of it. And next thing is actually crafting the blocks used to make this. And like I said, there are only 3 required types, that being the thermal evaporation block itself, the thermal evaporation valve, and the thermal evaporation controller. Now you're going to need 1 controller per thermal evaporation plant. You're going to need at least 2 valves, obviously 1 for input of the water or brine and 1 for output of either the brine or the lithium, depending on which one it is in the stages, if it's the first one or the second. So we're going to be making 1 of the controllers, 2 of the valves, and then I believe we are going to be making 213 of the thermal evaporation blocks. But something to keep in mind when we're crafting it today is these 2 require thermal evaporation blocks. So technically, we're actually making 226 thermal evaporation blocks, but because it is going to come in groups of 4, we are going to be making a little bit excess. So I believe we should be getting 228. So you can click all of those out here. Lots of blocks there. And then we can go and make the 2 valves. And I'm going to make sure we pull these out individually because we do not want to overcraft, something that I am extremely guilty of doing in a ton of these episodes. And then the thermal evaporation controller, which is 2 advanced control circuits, some glass pane, and a bucket, and then 5 of the thermal evaporation blocks. So there we go. Now I believe we should have sufficient. We are going to have extra on top of what we need. I believe we have 2 extra because of how many we have to craft in increments of 4. But now we should actually have everything we need to work with. We are going to have an electric pump. That's how we're going to get our water into this. So chances are that's how you're going to do it too. We are going to be powering that. So we are going to need a universal cable for that. And we are going to need a mechanical pipe for putting the water in. You're also going to use the mechanical pipe for pulling out the brine or the lithium. So you're going to need that. We're not going to go over that today. Off camera, I'm going to set up a second one of these to produce the lithium. But there's really no point in doing it on camera because it's an exact replica of what we're going to do the first time around. So we're going to come over here, and the first thing to note is the hole in the ground. The reason for this is because the only thing that you can change about this setup is the height of it. And it can range anywhere from a height of 3 to a height of 18. And that is going to determine the production rate or the max production rate. Obviously, if you're not putting in enough water, you're not going to reach that, but it will determine the maximum possible production rate of the lithium or the brine, depending on which one you're using this to create. Now, an important thing to note, and I don't know if this is intentional, but it used to be that the maximum heat was going to be determined by your height. And I always thought that was a little bit weird, and then that would technically determine the rate at which you can produce it. Now, I did some testing just to be sure. It appears that the maximum temperature it can reach is not affected by the height, so they can reach the same temperature, but it's still not going to produce the same amount. So the height will directly affect the amount that you're going to produce if you are running it at its maximum capacity. It's also going to determine the internal storage of it, but chances are that doesn't really matter to you, considering you're not really going to be leaving anything sitting in there. So it doesn't really matter, but we're going to be making it a height of 18. The reason the minimum is 3 is because you have a base layer that's required. That's a 4x4 that's completely filled. You then have a middle layer, which is going to be a hollow 4x4 that's going to contain the valves, the controller. And then you've got the top layer, which is the one that's going to potentially contain whatever, solar generators you might be having on it. So you can only have it as low as 3. You can't have it any lower than that, and a maximum of 18. And the other dimensions are 4x4. And so we're going to hop down here, and this should allow us, if we go all the way up to the ceiling, this upper level right here should be a height of 18. So we're going to fall down here. Got some water so we don't get hurt. I don't think that's far enough for us to die. And I didn't go back and grab the dirt like I said I was going to. Okay. Well, you know what? We'll just pretend that this does not exist here. And we're going to start building right at this layer. I know it's a little bit dark, so we'll just try and be quick. But we're going to put down the 4x4 of just straight thermal evaporation blocks. This is what it's always going to be. It needs to be all these right across the bottom. Now we're going to start the middle layers, and this can apply to any of these middle layers, 2 through 17, because they can all be this simple ring, right like this, of thermal evaporation blocks. They can also be made of the controller or the valves. So those can replace any of the blocks in here. I believe it used to be the controller had to be at the top of it, but that does not seem to be the case anymore. So thankfully, we can put it in our base instead of having to worry. It was such a pain the last time I played through because you had to go up to access it and see all the information about it. But that should not be the case now. And we can just continue building our way up here. We're not going to touch any of the other components until we get a little bit higher up into where we can actually access them and pull things out appropriately. And almost up there. I'm really hoping that this does not make the roof of our base look weird, having some solar panels up there, but I don't think it will. Okay, so now we are at our base level. What I'm going to do is actually build up one more so that we can have these at eye level, and then we're going to pull out the controller and the 2 valves. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and think through how we're doing this. And what I actually want to do is put one valve over here and one valve over here. The reason being we want to hide the water pump back here. Oh, and we got a nice little visitor over there. I hate those guys so much. You guys told me to get rid of them. There's, I guess, a config file that you can get rid of these guys. Oh, yeah. Okay, look who's running now. He's running from our friend over here. Yeah, okay. Can you leave now? Would you like to leave, friendo? He should be amazed by the technology in here. The guy's walking around with his llama / alpaca. I don't know which. I would hope alpaca. They make more money for their fur. But, yeah, I don't know. So he's in here, and he's seeing all these things, all these technological advancements while he's over there with his shawl and llamas. Okay, but back to the matter at hand. So we're going to put the water pump back here and hide it. And then I'm probably going to place our second thermal evaporation plant right over here. And we're just going to go right from this valve to probably one block over. And yes, I know it's not centered in the base. For all of you people that are freaking out, I have Minecraft OCD too. We've been over this before. I know it's not in the center of the base. We will restructure the design of the base with all these things to make it match. I promise. But we're going to put down the controller now, and it does not light up. You cannot click on it until you finish out the build. So we're going to fill the rest of this in. And there we go. And then you can see actually that this treats it like it is formed. It is a height of 13. It is heating up from ambient temperature, producing nothing because we have no water going in. And as you can see, it really doesn't go up much from the ambient temperature. The biome it is placed in will determine the ambient temperature it can go up to. Obviously, if it's in a desert biome, it's going to be hotter than if it's in a plains biome, which will be hotter than a snowy biome. But no one is going to really be using just ambient temperature to produce stuff with this, so it doesn't really matter that ambient temperature would only bring it up to 306 Kelvin. It's really nothing at all. But this is not the top, and so we need to go grab some extra blocks so we can actually get up on top of this thing. This dirt should actually be sufficient. It will save us. And we are just going to be smart about building up here. We just do not want to fall down in the center. So here we go, we'll get up. So now it should be, if we looked on here, a height of 14. And we can keep on going. So then we should look and see a height of 15. I know it really doesn't matter, but you can see a height of 15. And so this will be then 16 right here. 17 right here. And we will be at 18 at this layer. And so the way that you do this at the very top is going to be the corners are where the solar generators go. So you're going to fill in these blocks right here, and this will actually count as your top layer. So this would be 18 tall right now. And if we didn't want to add these in and just wanted ambient temperature, this would be done. Then we can put these down like so. And there we go. So now it is heating up. If we were to hop back down, we would be able to see that its temperature should be going up. Obviously, if you want this producing all the time and you're not going to keep it daytime in your world or don't want to have to worry about it, the heaters would be your best bet. Chances are later on in the series, we will switch over to those because if you're making things for a reactor and you're going to need extremely consistent lithium production, then you're going to want to make sure that it's using a heater, because if it becomes nighttime, then your thing is going to slow down on production. You're going to lose out on potential power. And when you're getting so much power from the lithium, and obviously the lithium has a bunch of steps after that to make it, but when you're getting so much power, reinvesting a little bit of it to heat these up using a heater is going to be, it's not going to affect you at all. But now we can see it is formed at a height of 18, which is the maximum height. The temperature is going up pretty quickly. And you can see down here, this is a nice little visualization. It will go from green to red. Chances are you'll land somewhere in the middle yellow portion of it with these. And that's going to determine the overall production rate. And so the left here is going to be water. The right here is going to be brine for this one. If you were using brine as the input, it would be brine on the left and liquid lithium on the right. Now what we need to do is pump some water in here. So we're going to get out the pump, our mechanical pipe, and universal cable. And for the time being, I'm just going to steal power from the turbine over here. It's got sufficient amount of power to power a simple pump. So we are just going to run it directly across here. This is not the plan forever. The reason we are doing this is because really I wanted to make the induction matrix today so that we could start running this consistently. We need somewhere to put the power so that this thing doesn't stop working and thus blow up our base, but we need the lithium to actually make the induction matrix. So this is coming first, and the induction matrix will end up sitting like somewhere right here as sort of a middleman for the rest of the power in our base. But we can put down universal cable there, finish that there, mechanical pipe, and we'll just drop the water right down here, and we should see the production of brine starting, and it's going really fast right now. You can see that it's not even able to, when I was testing it in a test world, to give you guys an example, I did a height of 3 and I did a height of 5, and they were both sitting at 1.8 K Kelvin, and that's about where they stopped, 1.8, 1.9 thousand Kelvin, and the production for them at that temperature was maxing out at, for the height of 5, it was 170 millibuckets per tick, and the height of 3 was 100 millibuckets per tick. So I'm sure there's an equation to determine it. I don't know what it is, and I'm not really looking to, plot data points for you guys to figure out what it is, unfortunately. Chances are you should just build the biggest one possible. It's not really that expensive, but it does vastly increase the rate at which you will be able to produce brine. And now it's full, so it's not even going to produce anymore. This will fill up the internal buffer with water, which is absolutely enormous because of how tall it is, and it will continue heating until it reaches its max temp that it's able to heat to, and then sit there until it becomes nighttime, and constantly then fluctuate up and down, since it's not going to continue to be heated when it's nighttime. But that's honestly it, guys. There really is not that much to it. Like I said, it is so much easier to work with than the other multi-blocks. It's amazing. So thankfully, we were able to keep our pajamas on, kick our feet up, be nice and casual about learning how to make this one, and enjoy it while it lasts, guys, because let me tell you, there will be so much worse multi-block structures in the future. They are coming, and they are coming fast. So enjoy this one and maybe the next couple that are really easy to make, and then we'll jump into the hard ones again. But hopefully you guys enjoyed today's episode. Hopefully you have no issues setting these up in your base. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments, but that is going to be it for today, guys, and I will talk to you later.
Standing in a glass bowl at the end of a black hole, cold, lost and upside down. Faces swirling past me, all my memories rolling vastly.